We have a video from Priyanka Poulose, who also was a presenter that really wanted to be here, but still wanted to share and contribute. So we'll start with that.
Hello, my name is Priyanka Poulose, and I am a recent graduate from the Master of Design program at Emily Carr University of Art and Design in Vancouver. My graduate research, titled More Than a Period, explored creative engagement and storytelling to transform the landscape of communication around menstruation. The question of how can we create meaningful, positive, and open communication about menstruation informed and guided the direction of my research. Through a practice-based research methodology, I explored this topic through creative responses in the form of both self-reflective and participatory design projects, such as Nanhi Chidiya, a playful microanimation and flipbook that is a visually driven commentary on the paradoxical celebration of women's fertility through cultural symbolism and the pervasive stigma of menstrual blood in Indian society. The second project, Patches Against Patriarchy, is a collection of digitally embroidered graphical patches that facilitate commentary on menstrual stigma and the politics of women's reproductive rights through irony, self-deprecating humor and puns, and taking visual cues from contemporary pop culture and internet memes. Transcending a personal perspective, my research then moved forward by developing participatory projects to understand diverse experiences of menstrual stigma. I began by designing and facilitating an arts-based storytelling workshop that gathered a diverse group of women to share personal stories of menstruation that would uncover culturally diverse experiences of menstrual stigma. This was done over the activity of collaboratively painting a community art piece with symbolic red paint. I then conceptualized Red Alert, a playful and engaging quiz-style game show uniting menstruators and non-menstruators to cultivate an inclusive understanding of menstruation. My research culminated in the development of two interconnected menstrual communication networks, Bloom Club and Bloom Talk. Bloom Club was established under the Emily Carr University Students' Union and operates as a safe and inclusive student community, welcoming individuals of all genders to come together on a monthly basis to share lived experiences and deepen their understanding of menstruation through participatory activities. These activities include creative engagement workshops like pin badge making, zine creation, designing stickers and fabric patches, all in service of dismantling menstrual stigma and transforming the community's attitudes towards menstruation. Other club activities include film screenings, quiz games, and art-led storytelling circles exploring diverse avenues for menstrual education and self-expression. With every Bloom Club meeting and in the group workshops I conducted over the course of my research, the sharing of personal menstrual stories was at the forefront. Motivated by a desire to share these moving stories on a bigger platform to a larger audience, the concept of a menstrual storytelling podcast took root. Bloom Talk is a short-format audio podcast that seeks to unravel the multitude of menstrual experiences narrated as candid personal stories by menstruators. The pilot season comprises 10 short episodes that span a range of topics, from painful first-time periods to amusing cultural myths, eye-opening accounts of gender in relation to menstruation, and informative accounts that chronicle the use of different menstrual products. Season 1 of Bloom Talk is available for streaming on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Future plans for Bloom Club involve collaborations with educational institutions, community centers, and women's health organizations to co-design creative engagement strategies focused on menstrual, sexual, and reproductive health education and awareness. For Bloom Talk, I am actively recruiting storytellers for Season 2, this time also inviting non-menstruators to share stories that have impacted their perception of menstruation. You can view all my research projects in detail and access my full thesis publication through my website, priyankapoulose.com. You can also get in touch with me for collaborations on LinkedIn at Priyanka Poulose. Thank you for your time.
Take a moment to turn to someone either you know or someone you don't know and share a bit about someone that you've connected with, either through this movement or other movements that you're a part of. So just a quick moment, connect and share, and I'll call you back and we'll get things underway.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for coming today. I think people are going to be trickling back. I apologize kind of as we move through. But this panel is called Menstrual Cycle, so toward the sustainable movement and movement that centers sustainability. And we have some wonderful panelists with us here today. So kind of similar to this, to the first panel, we have two prepared questions, and then we're going to open it up to conversation for the audience. And so let me just we have Kate, Abigail, Diana, and Jena here today. Sorry, that was not at all the order. I just read it off of my sheet. Yeah, there you go. Pick whichever one you like most, and I'll go with that one. But I don't want to waste time making you listen to me talk more. So the first question is, when you think about the politics of menstrual equity on post-secondary campuses, what do you notice about the ways that sustainability is part of the conversation or not part of the conversation? And so we'll kind of do what we did with Lisa, but in reverse. Start with you, Diana.
So I'm talking about sustainability more in the sense of sustainability of the movement on campus. And I was thinking about one of the biggest problems at university is people graduate. So you get this great movement going, and then the people leave. So it's really important to have a succession plan. And it's also really important to work with faculty and staff who support you because they can pass on the knowledge and pass on your succession plan. But also something else I learned that was really, really important, and I learned this from Ariel Reed, who works at the BC Federation of Students. And she's a Black woman, and I'm telling you that because I think intersectionality is important and the stories of Black women are often forgotten. So I really want to make sure I give her credit for this. Is how they got tampons and pads into their university was going to the facilities. They did not bother talking to the teachers, directors, none of it. They're like, who cares? We are going to go to the people who have the most power in this situation. And that was the facilities staff. The facilities staff understood. They didn't need research. They didn't need like any figures to back it up. The facilities staff just put it into their budget. They stay there. So they didn't have to worry about a new dean, new students, any of that. So I just really invite you to think about who holds the power in each situation. And it's not always the person you think. And I love her for sharing that little story with me. I think that's all about it.
Well, I'm like taking notes in my brain. That's would have been really helpful to know 4 years ago. So my experience is as a student, I graduated last year. But a few years ago, I started an organization called Blood Buds to bring more awareness about sustainable menstrual options and not just awareness, but access. Although we definitely started our focus on the products themselves, we wanted to make sure that there was an education aspect to that. And so the way that we were able to bring that programming and the products was through a sustainability grant at our university. And so I read emails, and so I usually scroll to the bottom, and I think that's how I found it. And so I think at a lot of universities that kind of were shared here, there's like your Office of Sustainability or something like that that will provide grants of your choosing. You kind of just design a project, and that's kind of where we started as a project, and then later transitioned as an internship where we were able to continue looking at our programming, kind of evaluating it through surveys. But I would say that while I had this like really fun idea, it was a secondary kind of option. So I think to more directly answer the question, sustainability is like kind of the second, or wherever it is, it's the last part of the conversation around menstrual equity. It's often, I think, the organizations that did exist prior, including like their student union or student government, there was an organization, a period organization that was experiencing a lot of turnover because people were graduating or transitioning to new opportunities, or it was summertime, and so there was no one there to just continue the work that they had already started. The goal there, as many were, to kind of address period poverty on campus by putting products in the bathrooms. And once we were able to do that, thankfully the government, the state government made that mandated without funding. We got those into the bathrooms, but there was no plan for sustainability of that program, and they were all disposable products. So I would say, again, secondary. And then on the flip side of menstruation of students, there's a lot of times like service projects that occur on campuses, including period packing products, period product packing parties. So like for community organizations that go to schools or homeless shelters or prisons and give out these little packets, they sometimes ask for volunteers to do so. And that's like a really fun activity that people come and get involved with. But sometimes it's usually just a tampon pad and panty liners and not necessarily enough for the whole menstrual period, or even the cycle with the things like that. So I would say, again, like in that case where we're packing things on campus for community organizations is always secondary. And I know hopefully we get to talk about this later, but period pad sewing workshops have been starting to become more well known. So yeah.
Thank you. Please. I'm Jena, and this is Kate, and we're both from the same institute, the Institut Santé et Société at UQAM. And since we're representing the same organization, occupying one seat, we decided to split the questions. So Kate's actually going to answer the first question, and I'll answer we're a bit rebellious. Sorry. So yes, hi, I'm Kate. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm actually a staff member from UQAM, which is down the street that way, a couple of kilometers. And I work at the Health and Society Institute. And we wanted to, in response to that question, talk about the campaign that we put into place a few years back, and that still has repercussions to this day. And so that campaign, so it's in French, but I think I have it translated in my head somewhere. The menstrual product alternative, zero waste, zero toxins. And the way that we wanted to do this campaign was to involve different partners that we have at the Institute, which include community groups and different institutes at UQAM. And so discussing about how we wanted to do an awareness campaign on different issues surrounding disposable products, so health issues, but also environmental issues. What the feedback was to be careful in how we frame this campaign, because we didn't want to put the burden on menstruators, women, when thinking about waste that is created with disposable products. So we had that in mind in all of the information that we put together. And this campaign was broadcasted on Instagram and was accompanied by tirage, a draw, thanks, with 3 kits, reusable products. And to build the information around this campaign, we had to do some research, and we wanted to be in scientific literature. And we realized that there was a lot of health issues with using disposable menstrual products. But we sort of wanted to dig a little bit deeper beyond this campaign that we did. And so we decided to collaborate with, and this is also, I have to read it because it's in French in my head, but so it's students that work at the INRS, and they are at the Intersectoral Center for Endocrine Disruptor Analysis research group. And so they did a very, very, very thorough research of available scientific literature concerning the toxicity of menstrual products that are disposable. And so that for me, so we have stemming from that, we gathered information, and we ended up having a 7-page report with 12 pages of references. And so those references, so Jena will follow up with the other question about what it means to have this report. But we started thinking about sustainability in a way where the industry should be held accountable for the way that they produce these products, because they do affect our health. And I think that needs to be more part of a conversation on campus, at least, but even broader. So.
It's okay, I have one. Thank you so much for those answers. I really am excited to hear more from both of you about that work. Just to comment quickly, first of all, you're all doing incredible work, and I love that you come from representing such different backgrounds, but still like within the same system of kind of institutions. And I also really appreciate what you said about facilities, because for anybody else who's looking to advocate within their institution, they will be huge allies. And it also helps us get away from this idea that these projects are special. special projects, short-term projects, that they're just part of the system. With a lot of people have had way more luck going up to the custodian guy or girl and being like, hey, will you put these samples in this bathroom? And he's like, sure, no problem, whatever. I'm not going to ask questions about this. Makes sense to me. And that's kind of the end of it, instead of getting so wrapped up in the politics of the university, which can happen if you go through like the gender inclusion office or whatever, which is amazing. And they are huge allies as well. But framing it as like this less glamorous, more toilet paper soap-esque thing it can be really helpful. The second question is, what is this? Oh yeah. As the menstrual equity movement grows in Canada and around the world, how can we ensure it is sustained as a movement that is sustainably centered? Yeah, that sustainably is centered.
Why don't I take it? Because that'll follow nicely off of Kate. So thanks to the organizers and all the previous speakers and all of you. It's always okay, Kate. It's always hard to present on the last panel, but you guys are all so fired up and energetic that I don't even feel like that this time. So to follow on what Kate was saying about accountability and touching on the question of sustainability, well, we were really in a space where we were looking at this as a structural issue and as something that should be the responsibility of companies and also governments. And I'm going to take a running start on my answer by going over the report a little bit. So Kate mentioned that we had a first phase of this work, which led us to the conclusion that there's a lack of information. When we wanted to build awareness, we came up across the difficulty of finding the information that we wanted to share with people. So we had the students at the ERNS, 4 doctoral students who did a very thorough overview of the literature. And I just want to say their names because they really worked really hard on this and I don't want to get their names wrong. So there was Gisiane Cardo, Belinda Corbido, Melanie Juarez, and Alec McDormand, who worked for about a year on going through the literature to build this report. And what they also came up against was a lack of information. So what they had to do was triangulate information a lot. And the structure of the report starts with period poverty and equity issues because it's important. And we go over some of the stats that have been shared already by other panelists. And coming up to an important fact that people who are experiencing period poverty or period precariousness, one of the things that they end up doing is using these products for longer than they're supposed to be used. So there's a half-life, if you want, of these products. And so one of the ways of getting around not being able to afford them is to use tampons for longer than the recommended amount of time. And this came to the important point of intersectionality and environmental justice and who exactly are the people who are most commonly in these situations, mostly racialized people, marginalized people. So from that intro, we then went into the data that they could find. So they went through the different types of components in these menstrual products, endocrine disruptors, pesticides, heavy metals, furans, and you can see the report. But what they came up against was very few studies that actually look at these toxic substances in menstrual products. So they first would cite those, and then they would look at if any of them actually looked at toxic exposures in humans, and then they would go more broadly and look at other studies that perhaps weren't on menstrual products that showed links between, say, pesticides and cancer. And so they've triangulated this data in order to try to build a picture of the possible toxic exposures from these menstrual products. And we conclude with a section that Kate wrote on the environmental consequences of disposable products. And this report was produced in both English and French, and it was being finalized right about the time that the CEPA, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, was being revised. So in the fall of 2022, the committee that was looking at this act, which is basically the act that regulates all toxic substances in Canada and hadn't been reviewed since 1999, was being reviewed, and the government was inviting briefs from the public to guide them in their analysis of the CEPA. So what we decided to do with the collective, Mila is part of the collective, 3 institutes at UQAM and 5 community groups was to turn our report into a brief. So we looked through the briefs that had already been published, and we wanted to reinforce the demands of these other groups using menstrual products as an example. And we came up with a brief that had 5 demands. So the first one was to enshrine the right to a healthy environment in the Canadian context, and to operationalize that with the precautionary principle. So if there's not enough data, take care. The second ask was to test these products on the body parts on which they're used. So one of the things that we learned through the study was that most of the products, when they were tested on skin, epithelial skin. But the vagina and the vulva are many times more absorbent than the epithelial skin. So we weren't even coming up with the right kinds of results. So that was our second ask. The third ask was to enshrine environmental justice into the SEPA. So looking at who's actually being the most exposed and why, and dealing with that. The fourth ask was to not be so vague in the way that we talk about toxic substances. So previously it was high risk, and we wanted it to be cancerogenic, mutagenic, endocrine disruptor. So being more specific. And the fifth ask was to label products. So currently, menstrual products do not need to be labeled in Canada because they fall under a medical category. And so our ask was that all the ingredients be listed. So coming back to the question about sustainability, the approach that we took was it shouldn't be the onus shouldn't be on each individual, young girls who are menstruating for the first time, men who are transitioning and dealing with all of the medical aspects of that, mothers who have just started to menstruate again and are dealing with diapers and breastfeeding and all the rest of it. It shouldn't be each individual's responsibility to go and do the research that's not even available in a language that's not accessible, but it should be the companies and the governments that are regulating this, and that it should be in law. So, thank you. So we built a website. The website is in French, but the report is in English. So you can find the report in English and French on the website, as well as the Instagram awareness raising campaign that was the first phase. And Kate has handed out these little cards that, if you use the QR code, will get you directly to the website. And the brief that we submitted can be found on the C5 SEPA government website. So it's there in French and English as well. And that's pretty much a summary of the report that we wrote. So, thank you.
Yeah, that was really amazing. And I'm really excited to try to implement that elsewhere. I think the question kind of had 2 parts, thinking about sustainability of like the menstrual equity movement, as well as sustainability in the menstrual equity movement in terms of like environmental impacts, or the relationship between periods and environment. And so I kind of looked at those 2 pieces personally, and I think that oftentimes we think about as menstruators or people's menstruation and the products they use impact on the environment. And I think one thing in the future that I would love to see is more, how does the environment also impact, as you kind of are as working at is, how does the environment impact menstruation, and kind of the good, bad, and ugly as well. So even thinking about like, what are the environmental toxins, as well as what knowledge do we get from the earth? What knowledge do we get from the moon? I would specifically just think that it's really important to look back at our ancestors and look back ancestors as close as our parents, and see what their experiences were with menstruation and learning about it. I think that as a student that's advocated for this, I feel like it's always, and the people that I've collaborated with is always, we are creating something new, and it's always on us to kind of like advocate for ourselves. But I think there's, in terms of thinking about sustainability of the movement, there's power in thinking like, we didn't start this knowledge. Like, this is not our generation. This is not necessarily even our culture. A lot of the things that we are learning and things that we're sharing out are from our indigenous nations, as well as just indigenous people to each culture. Those were the knowledge that they carried, and maybe it's skipped a generation and now we're kind of realizing it and packaging it in a very nice way. So I think we need to be grounded in that, and grounded that this is not new, that there's roots. There are roots that we are coming from. I would also say that with that knowledge, periods are very cultural. Just being here today as a Nigerian, and some of the people here were, including Jeanette, was talking about in her foundation, just about culturally, like, how do you bring products that are new to communities that are not comfortable or used to or aware about this. And sometimes it's not just like, here's how you do it, here's the education. It's just like, and it's maybe not even necessarily the stigma of it, but just like how maybe the culture around menstruation that is needs to be acknowledged. So I think for me, the future of sustainability is working with communities and working with the people who are directly impacted and the community leaders in that area. And then in terms of sustainability, you mentioned burnout, and that's something that I've been experiencing acknowledging for the past year, and had to take personally as an advocate, educator, and researcher, take a step back in the things that I've essentially been involved in. And the break was necessary, and I'm ready to get back. But I think that as the advocates, we also need to care for ourselves, and lean onto our community, lean on to the things that we are building, so that we can also like fully experience. I think personally, I started using menstrual cups and then started this organization right away, and I didn't really know how to use menstrual cups that well, but I was educating people and they were like doing it super well, but I hadn't taken the time to just like, all right, let me put this menstrual cup in me, figure out like, get used to my own body. And so in terms of burnout and thinking about turnover, I think that there needs to be more funding, obviously, but where does that money come from? I think it's really inspiring to see people who are like getting paid for this work. So just like networking and figuring out where the jobs are. One thing that I really wish I had were communities like this. I think Free Periods has like kind of an online community. I could be wrong, but in the US, there's not really, what was that? Charms. Get on that. I am on it. But there are not a lot of people from the US there. So that's one thing that I'm trying to also build is like, there's so many things happening in different states that I see just because I am chronically on social media and I'm like, these are goals, but like, we're not working together because it's a lot already. So I just wish there were a space, and connect with me if you know somebody who's trying to be on that as a student menstrual advocate. And then the last thing I just wanted to say, in order for us to be sustainable in our efforts, there has to be, before we even like launch anything, there has to be a plan to make it sustainable. There has to be a system of accountability for institutions. That's one thing. Like, we got products in bathrooms, dispensers are empty. A few years later, I saw like a huge stack of the products from the company in like one random building. And I was like, they're just sitting here. Like, I don't know who to call. I don't know what the plan with this is, but we got them. They're at our school. Like, it's all great, but it's like, who do I contact? So having a place for accountability, feedback, as well as just a plan to like, okay, we got these in 33 bathrooms. How many bathrooms are on campus? More than 33. So what's the plan to expand that? What's the plan to, when we opened gender inclusive bathrooms, what's the plan to get those into the new bathrooms that are being opened? So yeah, thinking about funding, jobs, grants for people who are doing this work. But then also like, what is the plan is the things that we're going to be working at least at my university. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to answer this one in two parts as well. So first talking about the movement and then talking about products themselves. So I'm just going to go back to succession planning and thinking about leaderful movements, which again is something I got from Black women from the Black Lives Matter movement, where everyone has an important role to play. And it's not just led by one person. Adrienne Marie Brown, another Black woman, talks about this in Emergent Strategies, where if you have one spokesperson, then when they leave, the whole movement can fall apart. So it's really important to build consensus organizing and still have leaders, but have like specialist leaders. So if someone's good at communications, that's what they do. If someone's good at research, that's what they do. And they're the leader in that, what they're good at. And within that, there's also skill sharing, which is really important. So if you don't like public speaking, like I don't like public speaking, it's good to have a friend to come up with you, and then you feel better, and then you both get better at public speaking. Yeah, and Adrienne Marie Brown also talks about biomimicry, and I think this could apply to periods and activism because they both have seasons. There's times when you're tired and you need to rest because you're burnt out, or, because that's what your hormones are telling you. And there's times when you have energy and that's the time to go, and there's movement already building. And then if we look at reusable products, this has been mentioned quite a few times that it's important that they fit the person, they fit the location, they fit the absorbency, I think is the word I'm looking for. And I wanted to give like an example. I was doing a research project last year and we were talking to people in remote communities. And our thought was we just go in with a bunch of reusables because it's very hard to deliver to them. And then their problem solved because they've got a product for a long time. But we found out not all these communities have running water, or they're in boil advisory areas. So for this particular person we were speaking to, they said that they want biodegradable because they have a compost. They don't have running water. They use an outhouse. The laundrette is like 2-hour drive away and they don't have a car. So yeah, it's really important to listen to people, and reusables definitely aren't the option even when you think they are. Yeah, and just from one of the conversations I had, just thinking about like the importance of knowing how to use these products. So like somebody asked me if you can wash your reusable pad with, or if you just have to wash it on its own. And it's just like, you probably already washed your bed sheets or your underwear or something like that with your regular laundry. So yeah, it's just thinking about having these conversations. What else are we thinking? Menstrual blood is good for watering your plants. But yeah, if you want to do that, do it with outside plants because menstrual blood is quite salty. So the salt can build up if you do it with your house plants. That is my fun tip for the day. And I also heard a lot of people talking about the problems of menstrual suppression, which all were very valid points, but also menstrual suppression can be really great, particularly for trans people, because menstruating can feel quite dysphoric. So yeah, just wanted to add that. And yeah, I think that's all I've got to say.
That was all amazing. Thank you so much. I have so much to say and so many questions to ask, but I do not want to take up space. I want to open it up to the floor to anybody else who wants to respond to the question that we asked about how we make this movement sustainable and how do we center that, or respond to anything at any point that any of the panelists said as well. He's just going to run around. No, that's okay. I have lots of questions too, but
They
I know
be
there's
able to look online. Who's doing that? Abby, is there an online question? Not yet. Okay. Okay. We want to know about the plant thing. Tell us more about the plant thing.
Tell us about the plants. I can't remember 100% why, but I think it's because menstrual blood contains a lot of phosphorus, and I think that's what's good for plants. Possibly, yeah, I don't remember all the science behind it, but do you know it works? I've had friends do it, and their plants really blossom from it. So.
Menstrual blood contains 3 electrolyte nutrients that are important to both human and plant metabolism: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The very same combo you find in store-bought fertilizer. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Your neighbors see you, they're calling the police. They're like, there's all this, they have this blood, I don't know where it's coming from, they're pouring everywhere. They're digging in their garden. Anybody else? Yes.
I had a question about the research. What are the next steps with that, and how do we be part of the next steps?
That's a good question. Is this working? Yeah. So we described a phase 1 and a phase 2. I suppose we could say that phase 2 is just finished this week with the production of these little cards. So the intention is to pass them out now, and we're going to leave some at UQAM since the website is mostly in French, even though there are some resources in English as well. So the next step of that is to go look at the website, read the report. SEPA was passed in June of 2023, and there were some positive aspects of that. For example, Canadians now have the right to a healthy environment. Yeah, supposedly. Yeah, and that was due to the work of the 3 senators who proposed Bill S5 and the groups who were holding them to account. Also, the ask for having more specificity in the risks was included, as was environmental justice. So it's too early to say, I think, if all of this is going to be implemented. So I would say a next step is to hold the government accountable to that. So they committed to that, and now we need to be watching to make sure that they are actually making good on those commitments. So there are lots of groups doing that. Environmental Defense, CAPE, if you don't know them, that's the Canadian Association for Physicians for the Environment, do a lot of work on toxics. You can go check out their website. CANE is the Canadian Association of Nurses for the Environment, and they work a lot with CAPE. There's the Breast Action. Yeah. And they also proposed another brief. So those would be some groups that were involved in improving SEPA and who are going to be committed to making sure that those improvements are actually shown to bear. And we hopefully will have a phase 3 of our project, but we don't have plans for that right now. So.
And I think there should be more research. So if anyone wants to do a PhD and bridge that gap, I think there's a lot of work to be done there too.
I'll add to that because while we were doing the review, a peer-reviewed article came out. And if you're interested, you can read that as well. It's Upson et al. 2022. And there was a systematic review, and they only found 26 papers that looked at toxic exposures with menstrual products, 26 papers, and only 3 of the 26 papers did a study on actual humans. So that's the state of research on the toxic exposures of menstrual products to humans that use these products. So there's room for research, to Kate's point, definitely.
Okay, we got lots of questions. I saw you.
I'm very happy you mentioned something about research, because I think that research is kind of like the information being put out to me is what got me into this in the first place, right? The fact that I was able to watch like maybe testimonial videos of them, or more like reading stuff like, did you know questions? Like, did you know this, that? So like just getting that, or just, having access to that kind of information kind of just brought out this fire in me, which is why I'm here. Thank God for that. Now, the question now is, where I come from, back in Nigeria, there is lots of the stigmatization, whatever you think the level of stigmatization here is, it's probably like people back home, because there's lots of like religious beliefs, there's cultural beliefs, there's lots of myths, and we have this pamphlet we kind of like work on where we had to start listing like lots of myths and like backing it up with like facts, like opposing those myths with facts. Now, we will probably have to do research on that level, but there is, based on even the educational kind of structure back at home, it's not what it should be, right? So how do you, speaking of research, do you ever think about researching stuff about this same topic, or maybe even other topics? Because I feel like even in terms of race and things like that, I think people definitely even react to these things differently, even speaking of toxins and stuff like that. So do you ever really get to think about, let's go to the other part of the world, let's see how we can research on these same topics, and in terms of advocacy, because now the belief system is different. Some things accepted here are even illegal back at home, speaking about gender. So like, where does that get you in terms of research? Like, how are you willing to partner with people back at home, research based, to say, if we can put these numbers out there, let everyone see what's actually going on here. Maybe that's like the key for awareness, right? So that's the question. Are you open to partnering with, people back at home?
I was just going to hop in, because I think this would be a great question for all the panelists if you want to take turns. I think the crux of it is like, how do we meet people where they're at? Would that be accurate? Like, how can we, like, no matter where we are in our communities or back home or wherever our families are from, how can we meet people where they're at so that they listen, and they learn and they can benefit? I don't know who wants to start.
I'll jump in. I am a researcher as well. I didn't really talk about that, but and that's like definitely my interest. So kind of on a related topic, I was on a project based in Senegal, and it was more of an implementation project on cervical cancer screening, and then later on treatment. And so although it was a very much programmatic topic, we also were facing like stigma, like, there's an association with HIV and cervical cancer. And it's like, okay, when people do get cervical cancer, how are they seen in their community? How do they address that? What are some misinformation things that they also have to go against? And so in that specific research project, which is ongoing, we work directly with university staff, as well as the medical physicians, midwives, nurses, community bajanago, or people who are like community grandmothers. Grandmothers, or what is it called? Like fairy godmothers, basically, of the community, and kind of like that. So having people that are on the ground who are working with patients to kind of combat these things. So there was the clinical side of things, but also the educational side of things. And the research that I am doing now and going to be publishing soon, check it out, look up my name in like a week, I don't know, 2 weeks. It was a survey based, and hopefully it can expand and become more qualitative, interviews, focus groups, things like that. And we're asking students, we did ask, like, do you experience period poverty? Essentially, do you experience lack of access or do you essentially skip classes or miss part of class or have to avoid changing your product due to your period? And then we also looked at like, okay, what is your educational experience? What are the stigmas? What are some things that you believe or don't believe? So menstruation is beautiful, or menstruation is dirty, or, like various things that can be sort of neutral. Menstruation is is necessary, things like that. So we did kind of look at that as well as more like the quantitative, looking at prevalences, but we also wanted to see like what were some of the things that people held, what were their comfort discussing periods. And I think that's something you can grab quickly from a survey, but and then kind of turn that into an educational aspect. And I think like I want to say a Purdue University study, they implemented free menstrual products, free sustainable products at their university. But one of the things they found out is no one knew that they existed, where to find them. They didn't know when they interviewed the students, they didn't know like necessarily how to use them. And so I think there's room for like that interview space, like even after you implement a program. Like we've implemented a program at my university, but it's like, okay, what is actually the impact? What are the things that we still need to address socially? And then, yeah, I feel like there's room for both of those, the education aspect as well as putting in a program.
Thank you. Okay, I hope I'm not going off topic too much, but what this made me think of was last year I worked with a lot of organizations that were in more remote communities in British Columbia. And one of them was Tapestry organization, Tapestry Collective, who's an arts-based organization. They wanted to support Indigenous communities to bring back menstrual traditions. So yeah, it was a really amazing project. And I'm going to use a phrase that was spoken a lot at the last time I worked with Lisa, is we worked at the speed of trust. So it was a very slow process. They worked a long time with elders to hear their stories, to make sure there was like the stories that were being passed on were true to them. And also a lot of it was around residential school survivors, a lot of trauma, obviously from colonization as well. And a really important part of the project was they worked with the elders who taught the younger people in the community. And they shared with us, the researchers, the process of doing it, but not the final results. So it wasn't like voyeurism. We weren't like... it wasn't as intrusive. And obviously all Indigenous communities are very different and very unique. So it's a project that could be replicated, but it's useless to pass on traditions from one group to another, right? Because they're just individual, it's obvious. But yeah, I also just wanted to mention that because I love working with creativity and artwork, and the room next door, I love all the artwork that's in there. And I'm just going to give a shout out to my friend Emily, local artist, who has brought some work. She just put it up in the last hour. So please, on your way out, please go look at it. It's really beautiful. It's when you go through, it's on the inside wall on your right. Okay.
Thanks for the question and those responses. I don't have something to add that's particular to menstrual studies, but I was involved in a project that was looking at best practices in using a gender lens in participatory research that was funded by the CIHR. And we did a scoping review about that, looking for articles that described the process of including gender in participatory action research. And one of the things that I came away from that scoping review, but also my own research, is exactly to the point that was just made about time and trust. So it takes time to build the trust. And sometimes that means that the scale, it just has to be scaled back, because there's no possible way to build the trust at a large scale in the human timeframes and funding timeframes that we're working with. And so, yeah, just reiterating that crucial point about time and trust.
So we have a question from the web, from Zoom, and one other question from the audience. Do you have time, Hayley? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll pass it to Gabby.
This is from the online folks. Jonathan asks, thank you all so much for sharing. I remember first hearing about reusable and more sustainable menstrual products and just how cool I thought they were. I wanted to ask, given all of the benefits that they can provide, what challenges have you encountered when trying to advocate for and promote sustainable period products, especially with a growing global focus on sustainability?
You want to start?
When we were doing this campaign for zero waste, zero toxins menstrual products, we talked to a lot of students who said, we can have these reusable cups, but we have nowhere to clean them because the bathrooms, the public washrooms, don't have an individual wash basin inside the stalls. And so they went and talked to, I think, facility. I don't remember exactly. And that's sort of in the works, but then COVID happened. And I don't know what the next steps could be or will be. But I think that's an issue for sure. And we have to think about, and we were just talking about it over lunch, that I think it's in Japan, they have toilets where the water that you use to wash your hands is on top of where I don't know the mechanics of toilets. I'm sorry, but anyways, instead of using like the fresh water, you use water that you just wash your hands with, and so it's accessible with the toilet, and it actually flushes the water and when after you go to the bathroom. So I thought that could be something that we instill in our university. I think it would be really, really interesting to be able to have that in individual stalls, because that is a barrier. Yeah.
So we distribute a lot of all the products we distribute are free. So the biggest barrier is financial, of course. But also I think sizing, especially in the underwear, it is so much more important to get things right when you're talking about flow and sizes, and people just being scared of them in so many different ways. First of all, they're like scared of the blood and they think it's dirty. That's why I was talking earlier about just throwing it in your laundry. And yeah, so many stigmas around that. Sorry, I lost track of where I was going.
Yeah, I'll carry on from that thought. I think one of the most powerful things is just having it physically there so people can touch it and squish a cup or touch a pad and be like, how is it supposed to keep the blood? So yeah, I feel like I was recently at a school, and I was there from 5th grade to 12th grade. And it was so interesting to see as we passed around the pad who was willing to just like toss it over, like hold it and like look at the back and the front and be like, okay, let me ask a question. So I think one of the biggest things definitely is like that fear or just like this unusual thing that I've never seen before. I think personally, though, one of the biggest challenges that I've experienced again is just like knowing what next. Fortunately, we're really fortunate, the organization that I started, to have funding. However, it's just like there's always a new group. It's like, okay, cups are great, but what other products do people actually need, and figuring out how to go about the different sizing of period underwear, things like that, or how do you educate people on how to use pads when they've never seen it before. I think my own personal experience was just, I mentioned this before, but I had a friend stand outside the bathroom like when I was like 20 or something, and I put it in my cup and I was like scared and but I think one of the things is we don't have necessarily like that companion space or that like physical community space a lot of times when it comes to trying something new or being in the period space. I think I really am like seeking collaboration a lot. As mentioned before, like we can't do this alone, and like literally like that's how I learned how to use things, not just by myself. It's because I had people like outside the bathroom door in the bathroom with me to help me insert a product or use a pad for the first time or things like that. So I think just having someone there, having our community and going from there is one of the best things.
So
Again, I'm not going to add anything new, just restating that education or knowledge and financial barriers. So doing research, sharing information, Instagram programs, things like that, sharing the information about why it's important to have reusable products. And then also in terms of financial barriers, one thing that hasn't come up yet is that a lot of municipalities have grants for buying reusable products. So that's something to check out too, because municipalities are responsible for waste management, and there's a lot of these products that are filling up their landfills or whatever they're using. So that's a place to go to look for solutions to that barrier, as well as diapers. There's often
only
in Quebec that doesn't exist anywhere else.
No, if you're not here, advocate it with your local municipalities. But across Quebec, there's subvention, which for reusable diapers as well. But so this is your hint to take this back to your province.
There's some in Chicago, so come to Chicago. I just wanted to jump in. I previously lied. I feel like the biggest thing is racism, actually. So just as I was kind of thinking more on the work that I've been doing, but joining other community organizations. One thing that I've seen is an organization that makes pads for people out in developing countries. I've just seen the quality of the pads. I was there was one time I was talking to a volunteer and being like, wow, this is so cool. We could do it in the US, we could do it in Canada, in developed countries. And they're like, no, people here wouldn't want that. It's not good enough. And I'm like, why are we doing this for people in developing countries? First of all, they know how to sew, they could do this themselves. And it's just if this is not a quality product, why are we doing that? Another situation I was in, and race, it was a white person telling me this, about a Black African developing country. And then, another situation was, locally for me was, being in a space, when you create kits, you put them in a packaging. And this time it was a pencil pouch. To buy it from Walmart, $1 to $3, and they were taking off the tags, not because it made it look, nicer, more presentable, but because they were we don't want them to return them to Walmart, to get money out of it. It's return this $1 to $3 thing, if they want to. I don't know if it's possible. You can buy milk for that much money. You can buy something that's useful. I don't need a pen. Why do I need to hide my pads in a pencil pouch? And so it's just sometimes I think that's one of the hardest things is, cultural awareness and racism, or cultural inawareness, but racism.
Right. No, thank you so much for that answer. And no, centering. One more question. Yeah, I just want, if I can quickly, I think the crux of your message is just centering trust is so important. And there's this idea of bread and roses, and people, just because they're in need, don't need to take whatever crap we'll throw at them. Right? People deserve nice things. And I think that's a really important message we haven't heard. I mean, not that people don't make it, but I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was curious, as we're sort of moving forward, reusable underwear, and the sort of menstrual cup, if there is very much research or understanding of the risk of how using a menstrual cup can impact microplastics that end up in your body. But also in general, I think for a lot of us, we want to use these products, but the toxins are these chemical names that feel very mysterious to us. So if for those of us who are leaving today, could leave with one type of wording or language that we should be watching out for when we're purchasing, what would you say we should be looking for to either make sure that that's what we're buying or what we shouldn't, either for underwear, our menstrual cups, or thinking about making our own? What should we be avoiding so we aren't accidentally poisoning ourselves?
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to throw it right over there.
Okay, I can take that question. So when we were doing the review in 2022, exactly 0 studies had been done on the toxic exposures of the reusable products. So in terms of a very scientific answer, I can't give you one. Perhaps a study has come out very, very recently. But the Diva cups and such are made out of medical grade silicone, and those products have been tested on more reasonable body parts than the epithelial skin. So I think we can be reasonably safe in saying that they're safer than tampons. And the pads, thinking about it from both a toxicity and a life cycle perspective, there's a lot of pesticides used in regular cotton. So I would be looking for organic products, both in terms of toxicity for our own bodies, but also the contamination of the environments in which the cotton is grown. And also knowing that for pads, they need to be changed several times a day. So you need to buy several of the pads, whereas a Diva cup, you can get by with just the one because it doesn't need to go into the wash. It can be washed when sinks are available, and reused for, depending on the product, 5 to more years. So, do you have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm the founder of Fornix, which is made from 100% medical grade silicone. And there's no plastic, there's no latex in it. I think it's important to do the difference because a lot of people ask me, oh no, I cannot use your product, I'm allergic to latex. It has nothing to do with it. So as long as it's made from 100% medical grade silicone, you're safe. Just be sure that it's really made from 100% medical grade silicone because a lot of discs or cups are sold wherever you can find them. And when you touch the silicone, it's really not the same feeling. So I'm surprised how a company can sell it to $5 or $10. But yeah, that's it. And another thing is that, which is the difference between tampons and a cup or a disc, is that it is non-absorbent. So compared to a tampon, it leaves the natural moisture in it. And the white blood cells, so it doesn't disrupt the natural pH, which reduce the risk of infection, just like vaginismus. Okay. And compared to, let's say, underwear, menstrual underwear, there is no absorbency, so there is no hermetic effect, which is also good for to reduce the risk of infection. So that's the differences. But as long as it's in medical grade silicone, you're good with it. Yeah. Thanks. And
wash your hands
any,
before.
not only Fornix disc, but any company. Okay.
But I do love Fornix discs. I use them.
I just want to add the washing hands before is very important, but maybe everybody probably knows that.
I'll just add a quick little thing is there's a company in BC called ISLE, like AISLE. They've done a lot of research. They're amazing. And they, particularly around PFAS, like, yeah, just make sure those aren't in your underwear.
Hi. I don't know if you've had this conversation before in the day or not, but regarding sharing information, community, there was this app in France called Clean Your Cup, and it was really amazing because it would share different spaces where there is water in the same room as toilets so that you could clean your cup in privacy and with washing your hands. So you had like the space, a picture, if there's soap, if there isn't, and kind of out of 5, how you would grade the place to wash your cup. So it was really good because if you'd create an account, you could add new spaces, and they were all like public spaces, schools, bars, cafes. I know Clean Your Cup, the people who started that app, that was like in 2016 or 2017. Unfortunately, they didn't have the funds and they had to close the app. I mean, if you want to talk to them, it's the kind of information that we really need. I mean, you were talking about products. I mean, it could be in an app as well, of the information of what products to use, and could be like, I don't know, the future. everyone's on their phones. We need to know where we can wash our cups.
I feel like there's a university here that's being represented that has like a map on their website with like all the products, or like here's where you can go, which bathroom you can go to, and has products. Is that yours? Huh. Period pin. Oh, maybe I've seen several like 2 universities. I think there's one in Canada too that I was very much inspired by.
Laurier has one.
Which one?
Laurier.
Okay. Okay. At Western. Okay. But I feel like we all need to come together and like have one app or something with a map, like, okay, here are where products are, but like, here's the quality of the bathroom. This is what needs to be fixed. And yes, I will be taking that idea and running with it. But yeah, I'm very curious, like what the issue was with the funding. But I think that's one issue is like we're not really talking to each other. We need to collaborate as, menstrual advocates in our realm, but like the bathroom is such a like intersectional space, as we were talking about earlier, and it means so much to different people, different identities, and it doesn't even really matter what your identity is. You could, wake up and have this need for this bathroom for a specific reason. And so I think one thing that we were finding in our study was like, okay, we need trash cans in the bathroom. Like, okay, that's basic, but it's like, okay, no one's like, why isn't anyone noticing that it's not there? And for whatever reason that you're using that trash can, it's just not there. So I think our facilities and not just the products are something that we need to emphasize. The water, of course, as well as what's there, how clean it is, and things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we're almost done. I'm so sorry. We don't have time for more questions, but I just wanted to give kind of like you're the first time everybody just like being just like 1 quick minute of like final thoughts or anything that spoke to you that you didn't have a chance to talk about. And if it's okay if I go a little bit off script, I just want to give 1 minute to lancer le micro vers Martine Lacroix, who has a beautiful art display. If you'd like to just explain a little bit at the end for just 1 quick minute, because she's generously donated or like displayed her artwork and around Menstrual Health Day in Montreal. They're all around the city. So many people send me des petites photos des peintures. Ils sont tellement mignons. They're so cute. And they raise a lot of awareness, and you do a lot of amazing work. Donc, si tu veux parler pour 1 minute après. Nope. N'importe quoi. N'importe qu'est-ce que tu veux. C'est bon. Okay. So we just want to do 1 minute. Is that okay?
About everything?
Sorry, I should have spoken a little bit more. Anything that you didn't get to say that you feel like is important. If there's anything else
does anybody want to go before me? Because I don't know what to say right now.
I guess 2 quick things. I also have like 1 little art piece of the person on a really cool chair holding a pad. So go check that out. But in terms of art, I feel like our art is a huge conversation starter. Even if it's not visual, it's performative. There was comedy that was mentioned. That's an art form. And I feel like that's very important to bring into our spaces, a very direct action step. So if you are creating a workshop, providing people the opportunity to create a collage or whatever periods look like for them, they can write that down. Like that's a really quick question. Like, what does it mean when you see the word period? I feel like those are really powerful to just get people's attention, to get them thinking about and kind of opening them up, grounding them. And then I think just the second thing I wanted to say is we didn't really talk a lot about disabilities, hidden disabilities, as well as things that can be seen. And I just feel like there's a lot of space for that in our work. And we definitely need to include those with disabilities in our work. Like we need to, they are our consultants, like period. And they look so different. So.
So I'm just going to go back to sustainability of the movement again and just throw out the idea of the Overton window. So basically, ask for the moon, ask for the world, ask for everything. So if you ask for pain relief and, products in the men's bathroom and time off work, paid time leave, then you might get tampons in the girls' bathroom. So just ask for absolutely everything. And also there's a thing that people who have been socialized to be women are often internalize this idea that we can't do anything until it's perfect. So there's a statistic that came out a while ago that men will apply for a job when they think they're 60% ready, women 100% ready. You're ready now. Whatever you're thinking of, do it. Just, go for it. So that's that.
Thanks. Wow. So there's been so many things today that I could bring up. Trust and time and inclusivity and care in the movement, self-care, that they're all equally important. And maybe just the one I'll choose to end on is the structural nature of this. It's not each of us individually who's dealing with this alone. These are really structural issues. The government and companies need to get their act together and be providing products at a reasonable price that are safe for us, and we need to hold them accountable to that. And importantly, that'll solve this problem. But if we're all working together in this area of sustainability and menstrual products, we can get a lot of gains in other areas as well. So if we're advocating for that, less toxic substances in these products, well, then in other products, there could be knockoff effects. So we really need to work together in all of these movements to get at the root causes, which in my mind is capitalism and a raw form of capitalism that moves us to buying products that are unsafe for us. So if we can all work together on that target via companies and governments, we can have lots and lots of gains.
I just talking with other community groups about this project, a lot of people were saying how insulted they were walking through the aisles of product management, menstrual products. And I feel the same way. I feel like, how is it possible that we have toxins in tampons that we put inside our bodies? This is not normal. So I reiterate what Jena just said, that we have to hold companies accountable, and maybe through laws. I think that's the best canal, but to just realize that this is not normal. We should not be afraid of putting a tampon inside our bodies or a pad.
Et on a juste une minute qui reste. Martine Lacroix.
I'm sorry, I'm not good in English and I won't be long because I work at 6 o'clock, so I have to hurry. I have just 3 things I want to say. May 28th is la Journée internationale de la santé menstruelle. Il y a beaucoup de gens qui connaissent pas ça. A lot of people don't know that day. So if you are able, just try to organize a little event in your community, with your friend, with your family, because media don't care about it. So thank you very much. Second thing, we live in Quebec. Le gouvernement Legault are not interested at all with menstruation. If you are able, just write email to la ministre Biron, Martine Biron. You can write to François Legault. You can write to your deputy. It's very important because it's very quiet right now. So, and I think there is an emergency for people who are homeless and people who are on welfare. They need products. It's very important. Last thing. Sometimes, I don't know how to say that, Hayley. Je participe à des distributions de produits menstruels. OK? Et j'ai découvert qu'on a un besoin criant pour les urinary incontinence products. Il y a des gens qui ont pas de produits pour l'incontinence urinaire. La population est vieillissante. Fait que dans ce temps-là, ils prennent des produits menstruels, même si ça convient pas. Puis je voudrais rappeler que les produits menstruels, Ça complique la vie des gens, mais c'est 5 jours par mois. Si tu as besoin de produits pour l'incontinence urinaire, c'est à tous les jours. Fait que j'espère que dans le futur, avec la société qui est vieillissante, on va commencer à s'intéresser aux produits pour l'incontinence urinaire qui sont aussi très, très, très chers et inaccessibles pour beaucoup de gens. Fait que merci beaucoup, puis merci pour le symposium.
Merci beaucoup. Yeah, so please go check out Martine's art in the other room. It's beautiful. Look out for it around the city if you're from here. The last part was about incontinence products. Basically, we talk about like menstruation, 5 days, 7 days, but if you need incontinence products, it's every day. And that's, I think, what we've heard a little bit more about in the movement is the need to move and talk about those products a bit more too. So thank you merci. I just want to hand it over back to Lisa and Jillian. And thank you to all of our panelists. One round of applause. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hayley. Thank you, speakers. If you want, you can stay there or you can sit down. It's up to you, totally. Okay, so I'm going to let Jillian finish things up and we're going to do one final draw. If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
It's been a real pleasure being with all of you folks today. We're going to say farewell in just a moment. I traveled here from Vancouver. I'll be coming back in a month, but I would really love for this to grow as something that we do regularly, not just in Vancouver, not just in Montreal, but in many different parts of this country where we're all working and advocating. And I'm part of a lot of groups that work outside of Canada as well. And it's really exciting to see all of the ways that we can help each other get connected as we start to grow in our activism and advocacy. It's been such a pleasure working with the folks here at Concordia. Jillian and Gabby, I don't know how you're doing everything that you're doing. I feel they deserve a really big round of applause. Yeah, this has been a fantastic event. And such a pleasure to connect with you both. So I'm going to pass it over to Jillian for a final draw and a goodbye. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you to everyone who's made it through to the end of the day. This was incredible. This has surpassed all of my expectations. I knew when I was uploading all of the bios onto the website that this was going to be an amazing day, but I can't thank each one of you enough for your presence, for your authenticity and your bravery to come here and really share and just be so open. Everybody has been incredible. I have made amazing networks. I hope you've all had an opportunity to connect and really, as we said in the very beginning, take action around menstrual equity. It is something that affects so many things in such a beautiful way. So, thank you all for being part of it, for your work towards it, and for that better future that we're all going to create. So we look forward to hopefully just being, this is maybe the first of many iterations of what we want to do.